you can come on if you have any questions about that meeting, or if we don't have any questions about the meeting minutes. If someone wanted to come on and offer a motion and then a second, I would entertain that at this point.
Move to accept the minute meetings.
Okay, and can I get a second? Thank you, Speaker Schwarzkopf. Can I get a second?
Second, Anne Marie.
Thank you, Anne Marie. So again, you don't have to go through the hand raising here. I'll give 5 seconds if anyone has any questions or if there's any discussion, just jump on and say something. If not, I will go to. Okay. I don't remember the best way we've done this previously, but and I'll probably do it the wrong way and get criticized by my team, so I apologize in advance. But at this point, we will all in favor of approving the minutes. If you could just come on and we'll just say aye.
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 Okay. At this point, if anyone would like to come on who opposes this and say nay. Okay, and anyone who wants to abstain from voting can come on at this point and abstain. Okay, the meeting minutes for the October 26, 2020 meeting has passed, and I thank you for doing that. At this point, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover, so I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Rigner, who's going to come on and just introduce our next presentation.
Thanks, Andrew. You have been hearing about the Henlopen TID for most of the meetings of this working group. It has been actively in progress by both DelDOT and Sussex County for quite some time now. I mentioned at our last meeting that it was nearing approval by both the state and the county. Okay, thank you. And it did pass. And Sarah Coakley, who is a principal planner with DelDOT's Division of Planning, has shepherded this through the process from the very beginning. And she has lots of information to share with you, which should answer a number of your questions. They've done great work as a team, and she has lots to share. So Sarah, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Good evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening on the Henlopen TID. So the TID was approved by Sussex County Council on October 27th, and then the agreement was executed by October 30th of this last year. And tonight I'm going to review several things with the group and also provide an opportunity to answer questions as well. So first, I'm going to review the process of developing the TID, like what is a TID and how was it created. Then I'm going to review the recommended transportation improvements that are included in the TID. Then I'll review the infrastructure fee program, which includes not only the fee, but also process information on how the fee is going to be collected and used to fund the projects. And then I'm going to conclude with reviewing the monitoring program, because the TID is not static. It's something that that changes and responds to growth in the area and traffic. Next slide, please. So you may be wondering why we created the Henlopen TID. So this slide, I'm going to cover the benefits of creating a TID. So sometimes we find ourselves developing improvements through DelDOT before we know all the traffic that they're intended to serve. And the district process allowed us to plan more comprehensively so that we've already identified a list of transportation improvements to meet the needs of the anticipated future land use. Projects in the district's capital transportation program also advance in DelDOT's capital transportation program. We have a 6-year transportation program, and projects within the TID get extra points in the ranking system that's used for prioritizing projects to add them into our 6-year CTP. The fees collected for the district function as transportation impact fees. So for the system to be legal, we have to use them on the district for which they're collected. So the TID fees stay local and can only be used for the projects in the TID. Oftentimes we hear from developers that they're not being treated the same as their competitors, and the district's fee schedule will at least reduce those complaints. The district's fee schedule also provides known costs for developers. They'll even be able to know what their costs are for transportation improvements before they even buy the land or buy into a project. And then the TID traffic analysis that was completed replaces the requirement to do a traffic impact study and make off-site improvements. And so in that sense, development can move forward a little bit quicker than it normally would. The traffic impact study process can take 6 to 9 months, and that is a part of the process that developments that are consistent with the land use forecast for the district won't have to follow. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the target horizon year of 2045, and this was the estimated build-out year for the land use forecast that Sussex County provided, and then also for the transportation improvements. And that assumes a full build-out of the future land use forecast, which obviously may or may not happen by 2045. And the target horizon year can be adjusted when the TID land use forecast or transportation plan is revised. The pink area on this map is the participant boundary, which is the land area or parcels that are covered by the TID requirements. And then the purple segments and green intersections are the transportation facilities where the service standards apply and where transportation improvements have been identified. Since development in the TID impacts facilities outside of the TID, you'll notice that some of the segments and intersections are outside of that pink participant boundary. Next slide, please. Sussex County Planning and Zoning provided a 2045 land use forecast in May of 2018 based on existing zoning. And so this map shows that with the yellow parcels are those expected to have additional residential units. The red parcels are those expected to have additional non-residential development. And then the purple are expected to have a mix of both residential and commercial uses by 2045. And an estimated almost 13,000 additional housing units and almost 1.5 million square feet of commercial development is expected within the TID participant boundary by 2045 if full build out occurs. So that means if all of the parcels are built out with the maximum land use that they could get. And this is what DelDOT modeled in order to identify the needed transportation improvements. Next slide, please.
Sarah, are you seeing the next slide? Because I see that it did go.
I am not, but I will move ahead.
No, I don't have it either.
Right. Jeff, are you there? Oh. You see the 2045 future land use plan, Sarah?
Yeah, it should be the level of service slide.
Okay. There we go.
There we go. So the results of the traffic modeling included level of service analysis for each intersection and each controlled approach. So each stop sign or traffic signal approach. And level of service is a measure of traffic delay at an intersection. And this slide shows a visual of what each level of service A through F looks like. So level of service A is free flow speed. Level of service B is reasonably free flow. Level of service C is stable operation. Level of service D is borderline. Level of service E is unstable. And level of service F is breakdown. And the pictures there show what those different delays look like on the type of road that is shown there. Next slide, please. In addition to conducting level of service analysis, DelDOT and Sussex County agreed on service standards and developing the plan for improvements in the district. Service standards define what should be considered adequate transportation facilities. And so we use the following service standards as a basis for identifying needed improvements. So the minimum intersection level of service was an overall intersection level of service for weekday, evening, and morning peak hours at signalized, roundabout, and always stop-controlled intersections of D or better. And this is the same level of service standard as what is included in our updated memorandum of understanding between DelDOT and the county. Also, all roadways within the facilities boundary of the TID are to be upgraded to DelDOT standards, including 11-foot wide travel lanes and then paved shoulders with widths based on the functional classification of the roadway. On state maintained roads, roundabouts were considered first as a means of intersection control. And this consideration was part of a larger intersection control evaluation that also considered safety, capacity, and right-of-way needs and property impacts. Compliance with our complete streets policy was assumed, with shared use path or sidewalk recommended along at least one side of every roadway proposed for other improvements. And then as development occurs, DelDOT will continue to work with DART to address opportunities for new transit facilities. Our regulations require that there be some measure of public involvement in developing the standards. Sussex County and DelDOT co-hosted a public workshop last February in order to consider comments received on the service standards. Next slide, please. This map shows the recommended transportation improvements for the TID, and these are the improvements necessary to meet the service standards that I just reviewed. And but these projects still need to go through our regular capital transportation program process, including public involvement, NEPA, and but they do get extra points in that prioritization process, but they still do need to go through them in order to be added to our CTP and actually move forward to construction. And please note that the lines on this map and the next few maps are not proposed alignments. They were used to develop the cost estimates for the improvements, and the actual alignments will not be determined until during the project development process. Next slide, please. This slide shows several new roadway connections proposed, and these include extension of Airport Road from Old Landing Road to Postal Lane, an extension of Mulberry Knoll Road to provide a connection between Cedar Grove Road and US 9, a potential new roadway connections between Plantation Road and Mulberry Knoll Road, and between Cedar Grove Road and the other new roadway, and then upgrading Nassau Commons Boulevard from a private roadway to a state maintained road, meeting DelDOT local road standards. Next slide, please. Approximately 7 miles of roadway segments need to be widened, and that means widened from a 2-lane roadway to at least a 4-lane roadway with 2 through lanes in each direction. And some of the segments also need a 2-way center left turn lane. So the segments for widening include parts of US 9, State Route 23, State Route 24, and Plantation Road, and they're shown in yellow on this map. And specifically, US 9 needs to be dualized from about 900 feet west of Old Vine Boulevard to Ward Avenue. State Route 23 also needs 2 through lanes in both directions from about 1,200 feet southwest of its existing intersection with Fisher Road to about 1,300 feet east of Deep Valley Road. And then DelDOT currently has a planning and environmental linkages study underway looking at the Mulberry Knoll Road extension and Plantation Road. Based on traffic analysis alone, if the proposed Mulberry Knoll Road extension doesn't happen, Plantation Road may need 2 through lanes in both directions. With the completion of Mulberry Knoll Road extension, the need for dualization is borderline. And then the last roadway that needs 2 through lanes in each direction is State Route 24. The parts that are shown in yellow there, which pick up from the projects that we currently have in our CTP. Next slide, please. This slide shows the intersections that are planned for traffic signals. Those with a white background are existing, and those with a yellow background are proposed new traffic signals within the TID. And these are proposed to get traffic signals when the signal warrants are met. And there are 12 intersections in the TID where new traffic signals. Those in the 5 Points area north of Love Creek include Airport Road and Miller Road, Airport Road and Old Landing Road and Rehoboth Mall entrance, Airport Road extension and State Route 24, State Route 24 and Mulberry Knoll Road, Plantation Road and Craig Boulevard, Plantation and Robinsonville Road, Mulberry Knoll Road extension and State Route 23, and Mulberry Knoll Road and US 9. Next slide, please. This slide shows where roundabouts are proposed, and there are 13 intersections where new roundabouts are proposed. A 2-lane roundabout is proposed at a realigned intersection of State Route 23, which is Beaver Dam Road, and Fisher Road and Dairy Farm Road, and then single-lane roundabouts are proposed at the other locations. And those in the 5 Points area north of Love Creek Road include Warrington Road and Old Landing Road, Cedar Grove Road, and a new connector roadway, Cedar Grove Road and Mulberry Knoll Road, Cedar Grove Road and Robinsonville Road, and Robinsonville Road and Mulberry Knoll Road extension. Next slide, please. This map shows 15 intersections where turn lanes are proposed, but otherwise the existing intersection control type is not proposed to change. And the intersections in the 5 Points area north of Love Creek include Nassau Commons and US 9, minus Conway and US 9, State Route 23 and Jimtown Road and Robinsonville Road, Cedar Grove Road and Ward Road, Robinsonville Road and Webb's Landing Road. And then turn lanes are also proposed along Old Landing Road for access improvements to existing subdivisions. Next slide, please. And this slide shows other improvements that are included in the TID. One-way stop signs are recommended on the Airport Road extension approach at Postal Lane, and also on the new connector road approach at Mulberry Knoll Road. An all-way stop is recommended at the intersection of Wilking Road and Kendale Road. An extension of Dolan's Way from State Route 24 to Robinsonville is proposed. That's shown in yellow at the bottom of the map. And then finally, it's proposed to remove the roadway connection from Harts Road to State Route 24, and that's shown in red towards the bottom of the map. Next slide, please. This slide shows the capital transportation program for the TID, and the total estimated cost of the recommended improvements is about $284 million. And of this, about $95 million worth are programmed in DELOT's capital transportation program for the 2021 to 2026 fiscal years. And this includes planning studies as well. And those are highlighted in yellow on this slide. And then some improvements may advance also by other means, such as the FAST program or DELDOT traffic initiatives. And the FAST program will be discussed later in tonight's meeting. This slide shows the initial TID fee schedule with developer contributions estimated to be about 23% of the cost of improvements. And DELDOT contributes the remainder of the funding for improvements when they're added to the DELDOT Capital Transportation Program. And since the cost of improvements goes up, the fees increase on January 31st of each year based on the Consumer Price Index, up to a maximum increase of 4% annually. And so the single family detached residential rate right now is $4,900 per unit. Is paid by phase, or $5,145 per unit by lot. For multifamily residential low rise, which is 1 to 2 floors, and townhomes are also considered, that is $3,822 per unit by phase. Multifamily residential mid-rise, 3 or more floors, is $2,842 per unit by phase. And if they're paid by individual lot, basically it's a 5% additional charge for the administrative costs of processing multiple smaller payments. For non-residential, the rates are based on the number of trips per 1,000 square foot gross floor area of the building, ranging from $2.88 per square foot for the non-residential uses with the least amount of trip generation to $4.88 per square foot for the non-residential uses with the greatest trip generation. Next slide, please. So the infrastructure fee program calls for the county to collect the fees prior to the issuance of the building permit. And the county will be holding the fees in a single TID account that then they'll transfer to DelDOT when DelDOT requests the funds for use for the transportation improvements that have been agreed upon. And then the manner and extent of the developer participation is to be documented on both the recorded subdivision or site plan and then also in an infrastructure recruitment agreement. Developers can either pay the fee outright or with the concurrence of the county and DelDOT, they can build improvements for credit against their fees owed. Next slide, please. There are a few development types that are excluded from participating in the TID. So this includes those developments determined by both DelDOT and the county to be inconsistent with the future land use plan and also to generate enough traffic to warrant a TIS. So to warrant a TIS, a development has to generate at least 50 peak hour trips or 500 daily trips. So if the difference between what they're proposing and what was included in the future land use plan, if it hits that threshold, if what they're proposing is going to generate more traffic, then they'll still be required to do a TIS and contribute to offsite improvements. The development of garage studio apartments is also excluded from participating in the TID. And then finally, minor subdivisions as defined in county code with up to 1 application per parent parcel. Next slide, please. So DelDOT and the county are working on finalizing a fee calculation and submittal form that developers will fill out and submit along with their fees. And it'll be a fillable Excel form that'll calculate the fees. And they'll just need to enter the number of units and also the square footage for non-residential buildings by IT land use codes, and then the form will calculate their fees. Next slide, please. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, a TID is not a static. It doesn't stay the same necessarily. Obviously, traffic conditions can change, the housing market, the demand for non-residential can change. And so, the build out rate and future land use can change. So that's why monitoring is going to be very important. So the monitoring program includes a commitment from DelDOT to monitor traffic volumes in the TID. And then DelDOT will provide the county with our findings and recommendations. And so the first report will be in calendar year 2022, and that's because the traffic counts that were initially used will be 5 years old then. And then we're committing to provide additional updates at least every 5 years after that. Next slide, please. In conjunction with the development of our capital transportation program, in odd-numbered years, the county will recommend projects from the DelDOT CTP for inclusion in DelDOT CTP. And then inclusion of the recommended projects are still subject to DelDOT's capital transportation program prioritization process, but projects in the TID do get extra points. And now I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That was wonderful and a lot of information. When we were going through the introductions in the beginning, I was asking you what you all were most looking forward to in 2021. So now I'll give you what I'm looking forward to most, which is more engagement out of our working group. We certainly want to provide as much information as we can to you, but we do want to try to get all of you to engage to whatever comfort level you have. So this is a great first time to do that. I won the pool. I chose that Bob Fisher would be the first one to ask a question. So I get to collect on our pool money. And Bob, I'll go to you. You can unmute and ask a question.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. And you can send me my cut of the of what you want.
We worked it out in advance.
Thank you. Yeah, I have two quick questions. I did not see safety levels. A couple of years ago, I looked at the strategic plan from DelDOT, and safety issues were the number one factor that they used. And I realized that safety is inherent in everything that DelDOT does, but I didn't see how safety levels, safety improvements, safety levels were included explicitly in the service standards. And I don't need an answer, I'm just commenting. And also I noticed the Minos Conway was funded for like, was it $6 million? Does that include a right turn lane heading, heading south where it intersects 9404? Because I know that people have been asking for that. And actually, I didn't notice, is there going to be a signal there, or is it still going to just be a stop sign with maybe a right turn and a left turn lane?
Sarah, maybe talk about the Minos Conway if you know, and if you have any kind of response to the safety question that Bob asked.
Yeah, so it does include turn lanes. I can't remember off the top of my head whether it includes.
Well, if you don't know, Sarah, we can always follow up. You know, as we do when we get questions, we can always follow up in our following 5 points email update that we will send out in February. If you don't have that, handy right now, Sarah.
Yeah, I don't believe it includes a signal, but I can double check on that. But I know it does include turn lanes there, and also realigning the curve on Minos Conway. So even though safety isn't specifically like called out in the service standards, the concept plans that were used to create the cost estimates did include a safety evaluation. So like looking at things like the curves in the roadway, a number of the concept plans include fixing those. And then also our CTP prioritization process that all these projects will go through also includes safety as a factor as well.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to go to, I think DJ had his hand up next.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I was just wondering, Sarah, the schedule, is there a schedule for projects that aren't already in the CTP? I know there's at least a handful that are, but there's obviously a ton of projects out there that are not in the CTP. So is there any kind of, and I know it would be subject to change based on funding and different priorities or whatever, but is there any kind of plan or schedule to get the projects that aren't in the CTP into the CTP?
That's a good question. So DelDOT is working on developing a prioritization process to help with that, because what we'd like to do is actually kind of slate the projects by, okay, so we have about a third are in this CTP. So we want to kind of identify the second third that'll be next, and then the last third, in order to work on getting those programmed into future CTPs.
Okay, thank you. And then the fees, I assume that the fee structure is based on completion of all these improvements being constructed in open traffic. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay. And how confident is DelDOT? I know the county has to recommend, then DelDOT has to decide when to put them in. How confident is DelDOT that by 2045, all these projects will be either constructed or in the CTP?
Well, that's a tough, asking a confidence question is a tough question. So maybe, Sarah, maybe respond to DJ, but like in terms of the process between now and 2045, in terms of how these projects will come through and the factors that go into maybe whether all those projects can kind of make their way through the pipeline.
Yeah, so we'll look at things like where the growth is, how many building permits have been issued, how many subdivision applications, how many like units or square footage are in those applications and where they are in order to prioritize what improvements to look at next. And then our CTP prioritization process, I think, has like 7 different criteria that are used: safety, operations, economics, or at least 3 of them. But that's why the monitoring program is going to be so important, and will allow us to make adjustments going forward by, updating the analysis and the land use plan at least every 5 years.
Okay. And the reason behind the question was because basically the fees are going to be collected based on all the assumption all the improvements will be built. So, I don't know if there's some point as you evaluate every 5 years, if it gets determined that some of the improvements maybe aren't necessary, or maybe even stuff like as some of the projects go through the process, the design plans get completed and the estimates are significantly different than what was assumed. So as every 5 years, as you do your updates or whatever, is all that kind of going to be factored into it? Because if the fees are based on improvements that maybe we need more improvements, or maybe some improvements are never going to be built, then it would seem that would need to be reevaluated.
Yes. Yep. And our existing TIDs that have been in operation for a while, Southern Newcastle County and Westtown, we've done traffic updates about every 5 years, and we've found in some cases like some projects have been adjusted, or additional projects added and identified as needed, and then the fee schedule gets adjusted accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Gail, your hand has been up, but I think that was from earlier when I had you press *3 to unmute, which was the wrong thing. So if you do have a question, come on. If not, if you could press *3 just to lower your hand. So do you have a question?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, if you could just hit *3 just so kind of clears your hand from being raised. And I'm going to go to Carol Core, who has a question. But Carol, I was also going to come to you because you joined just after we did our introductions. So if you could also just, prior to asking any question you have, just introduce yourself and kind of who you represent, that would be great.
Okay. I live in the villages of 5 Points, so I represent the villages. And I just have a question about the service standards for a roadway. When DelDOT monitors the traffic volumes with the new development projections, if they predict that a roadway would drop below an acceptable level of service, what options are available to them? Can they stop the developments that would impact the roadway? What can they do to keep the level of service up to an acceptable level?
Yeah, we would want to get it programmed and get it in the CTP and move it forward. And depending upon the developer's fee, we could possibly have them do it for then credit against their fee owed.
And so if the roadway becomes an unacceptable level, how long would it take to fix it or do improvements? What would you do to fix that situation?
And certainly, Sarah, you can respond, but if any of our other project team members want to jump in to assist with that as well, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is for that to happen and that's why we want to make sure that we do the analysis on a regular basis so that doesn't happen.
And Mark, were you going to jump in? And just introduce yourself, Mark.
Thank you, Andrew. This is Mark Cote. I'm the Director of Planning for DelDOT. And I was going to add, not only do we have the monitoring process, but as Sarah said, we can also have the developer make an improvement. So if they are suddenly dropping a large amount of development in an area that we didn't see coming for some reason in the monitoring program before, we could have a developer do improvements. Also, if development is out of character with what was already approved, then they could also be required to do a TIS. So I think between the planned land use we have, the monitoring reports that are done every 5 years, we should have a very good sense of what's happening and what's required.
Great. Thanks. And Carol, if you could lower your hand just so I don't get myself confused. I do want to open it up to any more questions, and I don't see any hands, but while I'm waiting, we did also have Lloyd Schmitz join us after we went through the introduction. So Lloyd, if you could maybe come off mute and just introduce yourself, kind of if you're representing any particular group or anything, and just say a quick hi to the group.
Okay, my name is Lloyd Schmitz, and I'm just a resident of off a New Road, and glad to participate. Thank you.
Thanks, Lloyd. So any other questions for Sarah or for regarding the, or any questions about any of her slides regarding the TID presentation? As everyone knows, we really try to use this working group process not only to sort of do our standard updates regarding the implementation plan, but also to dig a little deeper on certain things. So we've done that with DART and DTC service. We did that with the project development process, with certain interchanges over Route 1 up by 16. A few other things that are not coming to my mind right now, but we try to have something a little different at each meeting based on an interest level. So any other questions before we move on? And Lloyd, you can go back on mute just so you, okay. So Jeff, we'll turn it back to you. I do want to remind any members of the public who are still listening in, and again, we do thank you. We do have quite a few. I show about 27 members of the public here, that if you do want to make a comment at the end of our meeting, just go to the Q&A tab, Q&A button, which should be on the bottom right of your screen, and just type in your name and just say, I'd like to make a brief comment, and I'll come to you at the end. Right now, I don't have anyone who's looking to make a comment, which is fine. So again, Jeff, I'll go to you to go through our phase 2 implementation plan update.
Thanks, Andrew. Before I start, I wanted to again thank Sarah for a detailed description of the TID program and all the work that she's done to bring that across the finish line. She mentioned a lot of transportation improvements that were not shown on the slides specifically. There's a page, actually there are 3 pages in your packet that show a list of all of the improvements that she was talking about. So working group members have that information, and that will be posted for members of the public and anyone else who's interested on the 5 Points website. So I am here to give our usual quarterly update to the phase 2 implementation plan. Our January update each year gives us an opportunity to consider what projects are going to be added to our work plan for the coming year. So I do have some new projects or new recommendations that are likely to move forward within the next 12 months or so. As a reminder, as we discuss at each meeting, there were 78 recommendations of the phase 1 working group that are broken into 5 different categories. And we track each of these at each of our quarterly meetings so that you can see what's actually getting done. And I heard that from a number of folks as they did their introduction, saying we want to see some things actually happening. And that's our goal as well. And we want to make sure that as these things are marked complete, they get checked off and we can show continued progress year after year.
Hey, Jeff, I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second, if that's okay. Hey, DJ, I'm just letting you know just that you are still on video, just so you know, okay?
Thanks, Andrew.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So the last time we spoke, 43 of the 78 recommendations, so we're well over half, had something going on. So they were either in progress, they were ongoing, or they were completed. That's our goal, obviously, is to get things either completed or ongoing means it's a regular part of an agency's process. So monitoring traffic, for example, is a regular part of DELDOT's process. We've gone up by 4 over the last quarter, so there are 47 now. There were two more that were remaining to be started in 2020, and we have moved those forward. I'll talk about them in a second. B8, which is a parking management system to let drivers know when parking lots at major destinations are full, and B9, connections to the Lewis Transit Center. This is a chart that goes in our annual report every year. I'll talk about our 2020 annual report in a second. And what it shows is projects that are furthest advanced are at the top. So things that are ongoing are blue, complete are in dark green. Things that are in progress are light green. And then things that are longer term have not yet started to be addressed are in gray. So the goal is to get those bars at the top, the blue and the dark green, to take up the whole height of the bar, and that the ones that are longer term and in progress eventually go away. So as you can see, each year, more and more things are moving up to the dark green and the blue at the top. Category A is projects that are being addressed by current DelDOT projects and initiatives. There is no change in this category this time around. All of these projects are either complete or in progress. Category B, we have a number of changes. These are policies and procedures, which are not fancy, but they're the bread and butter of how agencies get things done. So moving things forward in this category is as important as building projects. So we have a number of changes here. Category B1, or I'm sorry, recommendation B1, was to require new developments to plan for interconnections to any future development areas and monitor to ensure implementation. I've asked Jamie Whitehouse, who's the Director of Planning and Zoning for Sussex County, to speak briefly to this item. Jamie, are you on the line?
Hey, Jeff, can you hear and see me? So,
yes. Go right ahead.
Basically, this is a procedural implementation. So all subdivision applications require a pre-app meeting with staff. Those subdivision applications that are more than 50 units, they go through the state's review process.
Hey, Jamie, this is Andrew. I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. We can hear you, but it's kind of faint, and I think it's difficult to hear. So I don't know if you can raise your volume a little bit or just get a little closer to the microphone.
I can do both. Can you hear me now? So,
yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Is that better? So
yeah.
Basically, let me start again. So all subdivision applications received by the Planning and Zoning Office, they require a pre-app meeting with staff. So an applicant has to sit down with a planner and talk about their application. And where we're seeing opportunities for interconnectivity, as a procedural requirement, we're having those meetings, and in those meetings, we're having these discussions. Now, where we have larger subdivisions of more than 50 units, they are also reviewed on a plus level through the state. And these conversations are starting to happen at the very beginning now, before the application even progresses to a public hearing, just to identify the potential for this to happen. It's still a requirement for the decision maker to decide through the Planning and Zoning Commission and for those RPCs that go to County Council, whether it's actually a requirement or not. But the staff are having those conversations early in the process to identify where it's possible. So there has been movement on this, and it is ongoing, but it still has to be determined on a case-by-case basis. So I'm not saying that it's going to be appropriate or even necessary in all cases, but we are having those discussions.
Thanks, Jamie. We do have an example of that on the next slide. Would you be able to describe how that works?
Sure. So this is on the northwestern edge of the 5-point study area. So this is Best Shot, Delaware. And this is a commercial site plan that went through the Planning and Zoning Commission in September of last year. And basically it's a 13,000 square foot indoor shooting range application with parking. It has received preliminary approval, but if you look in the bottom left-hand side of the drawing, which is actually the northwestern side, you can see where there's a proposed cross-access easement that actually reduces the need to have vehicle movement onto SR1. And this is actually adjoining an existing C1 parcel where there is an existing business use. It's actually a retail use. And this is a good example of where we're having those discussions and encouraging interconnectivity between commercial and commercial. So this is a good example within the 5-point study area.
Thank you, Jamie. Are there any questions from the working group for Jamie before he signs off? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Our next item is also related to Sussex County, so there may be some questions for you, but it also involves DelDOT, and that's modifications to either land development requirements on the county's perspective or the development coordination manual that would require additional buffers or setbacks for new developments for future road expansion. So from the county's perspective, last year, a potential revision to the zoning code was discussed to clarify the maximum extent to which parking may be permitted in the front yard setback versus leaving that area entirely clear for potential future uses. And from DelDOT's perspective, they've updated the development coordination manual to require greater width along principal arterials. Good examples are US 9, SR 23, which are the roads which are most likely to require future widening. So that requires 50 feet of right-of-way from the center line of the road, so a total width of 100 feet of right-of-way, plus a 15-foot permanent easement outside the right-of-way on each side. That means that there's a total clear width of 130 feet, which provides greater opportunity for widening of these highways in the future as traffic demands require. And so based on the progress that's been made by both the county and DelDOT on this issue, we're calling this recommendation in progress. Are there any questions about this from the working group? All right, I will charge ahead category by category then. And at the end of each category, Andrew, if you could let me know if folks have raised their hand with questions or comments, I'm happy to pause.
Will do.
So recommendation B3, we have already called complete, and that was the modifying the signage southbound on Route 1 in Milford to encourage people to make good choices about the travel routes that they make. We just wanted to update you. Last time we mentioned that DelDOT was testing travel time messages. They're now on full time. It's quite likely that that may change so that it just happens during peak periods, just so the message isn't up all the time. But that functionality is 100% complete now and being used by DelDOT on a regular basis. B7 was continued TID studies both east and west of Route 1. You heard in great detail from Sarah that the Henlopen TID has been approved, so this recommendation is now considered complete. I mentioned earlier recommendation B8, which is the parking management system. The idea of this was that, just to remind those of you who are not part of the process originally, was that folks oftentimes will be driving to the beach area, going to somewhere. Cape Henlopen State Park is a destination that probably came up more often than others. They drive all the way through the highway system to get to Cape Henlopen State Park. It's closed because the parking lot is full, and so they have to go back out and choose to do something else with their day, or find other ways to get there, and that creates additional traffic in the network. So what we're looking to do is work with DenRec and other folks who own or have other large parking lots in the area that could potentially fill up to find out what their issues are with parking, see if there are opportunities that we might be able to provide transit service from either the Lewis or Rehoboth Park and Rides to be able to get to those destinations, and then let drivers know in advance. So there would be some type of sign that would say parking at Cape Henlopen is full. You need to park here and take the bus. And we're just getting started with that. We're coordinating with DenRec to find out about what data they have for the state park parking lot filling up. And we will be advancing this through the course of 2021. B9, study enhancing new road for the byway master plan. The byway master plan was approved last year. So this recommendation is now ongoing. There are multiple projects that are incorporating the recommendations of the new road master plan. Probably the most public-facing one so far is the reconstruction of the Canary Creek Bridge, where the width of the bridge and its approaches were designed specifically with the recommendations of the byway master plan in mind. That project is just at a conceptual stage, but will be moving into final design this year. Likewise, developer improvements along frontages on new road are being required to comply with the provisions of the master plan as well. So this is being considered ongoing. B14 is one of the new ones that we're going to be initiating in 2021. It's to identify where trees can be safely planted within the right-of-way. So we have some work to do before we are going to give you some work to do as part of this process, but DelDOT's governed by a number of safety regulations that govern how trees could be potentially planted within the right-of-way. So setbacks need to be considered, clear zones, what have you. As well as, as trees are planted in right-of-way, costs for maintenance need to be covered. And there are a number of places in the state where there are sponsorship agreements for these types of things. So we're committing as part of our work plan in 2021 to come back to you with information about where trees can and cannot fit safely within the right-of-way. And with that, armed with that information, you'll be able to tell us some suggested areas where this should be considered in the future. B25 is identifying the costs and benefits of dedicating Nassau Commons Boulevard to public use. You heard Sarah mention in her long list of improvements that this was one of the segments that could potentially be upgraded. So DelDOT is working with the developer of the vineyards to potentially improve the section near US 9. We're also looking into what right-of-way issues exist, maintenance responsibilities, and how those would change if the road was dedicated to public use. So although the TID recommended a project to improve Nassau Commons Boulevard, there is not yet funding in the CTP to do so. We also heard from you in phase 1 that we should develop a better process for constituents to request transportation improvements. This will be initiated in 2021. As you can see here, DelDOT is developing a new online portal so that the public can identify transportation issues and request improvements, which is a great opportunity for transparency and inclusion of lots of folks who have ideas. And it's anticipated that that portal will be complete in the fall. We'll keep you posted on its progress. And that was the last I had for category B.
And I don't see any hands, but I'd love to see if anyone wants to follow up any further on any of those projects that are moving ahead. Okay. Jeff, why don't you keep going through into C?
Will do. As you can see here, this is...
Hey, Jeff, Carol Core has her hand raised. So, Carol?
Great.
Carol, you're on mute. You got to come off mute. Yep, go ahead.
I was wondering about the byway master plan for New Road. And I know there's Savannah Road, the Savannah Road improvement plan. And is there going to be a master plan for that whole area? Out to Kings Highway, it covers Old Orchard. Is there going to be a master plan developed?
I think I'll ask Gail to respond to that in part, but from what I have heard in working with the byway folks at DelDOT, the three principal corridors that form that byway are New Road and Kings Highway, which already have master plans, and Savannah Road, for which a master plan is likely going to be moving forward here shortly. Gail, if you're on, is that a correct statement?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Gail. Go ahead.
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. Yes. First of all, on Savannah Road, we are already working with DelDOT on, the Old Orchard Road project and the realignment of Old Orchard Road and some of the improvements, on Savannah Road and West Coast there with landscaping enhancements that will be included with that project, even though it doesn't have a master plan. So, and also working on improving the bike ped and improvements that are in that project so that they connect better and are more useful to help move people around than came out on the original design. The original design seems to have a number of disconnects, so we're working on fixing those. But on the master plan for Savannah Road, we did vote to seek funding for that, and we're in the beginning process of doing that to begin working on the Savannah Road master plan.
Great, thank you, Gail. I appreciate you jumping in.
And Carol, if you don't have anything else, if you could lower your hand. If you have a follow-up, please jump in now. But if not, you can lower your hand and go on mute again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Why don't you continue with C? I don't see anyone else with a hand raised.
You got it. So category C is making the most of existing roadway infrastructure. So this is where we start to get into where the physical changes, construction projects and such. So there are 4 different projects that have been moved up, or recommendations that have been moved up in status in this category. For C1, that is conducting a corridor study on Route 9 to determine the feasibility of widening to 4 lanes. This is just a clarification. This widening, as you heard from Sarah, was recommended by the Henlopen TID study. We mentioned before that a project to move this forward is in the CTP and it remains there. So that is going to be happening shortly. C3 was to initiate a capital project to improve the intersection of Old Landing and Warrington Roads. That project has been initiated. It's in the CTP, so this recommendation is complete. Next is improvement of the intersection of Cave Neck Road, Sweetbriar Road, and Hudson Road. We mentioned before that this project is programmed. Design was originally scheduled to start in FY25. And Shantae's going to speak briefly about the FAST program, which was approved by Sussex County Council, which is going to allow this project to move forward more quickly. Shantae, are you on?
I am. Good evening, everyone. I'm Shantae Hastings. I'm the Deputy Secretary and Chief Engineer for the department, and just wanted to talk really quickly about the Fast Track program. FAST stands for Funding Accelerating Safety and Transportation. And so we've been able to work out an agreement with Sussex County where they would select a road project that's already in the CTP, typically in the last 3 years of the program. They would fund that selected project, including the design process, right-of-way acquisition, as well as construction. By funding a project now, the completion date gets advanced by several years. So as Jeff mentioned, the design was programmed for Cave Neck, Sweetbriar, and Hudson in fiscal year 25, and we're able to move that up to start this fiscal year. DelDOT administers the project through the entire CTP process, and then after the project is constructed, DelDOT reimburses the county for the entire amount that was spent on the design, right-of-way, and construction. The county did approve this program in December, or on December 15th of 2020, and they also selected the Cave Neck, Hudson, and Sweetbriar project, and our team is in the process of getting design underway.
Thank you, Shantae. Sarah also talked about Minos Conaway Road. So we did mention that there was a curve compliance study that was done and there was signage put in. That's now almost 2 years ago. The TID study, as Sarah mentioned, did recommend a project to improve Minos Conaway, but this is one that is not yet funded. We're recommending initiating recommendation C14.
Hey, Jeff, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. I'm sorry, I was slow on the trigger, but Speaker Schwarzkopf has a question.
Okay, great.
I do. You were talking about Old Landing Road and the improvement there. I forget which slide that was.
There you are.
Old Landing Road and Warrington Road, C3?
Yes, sir.
You said it's in the CTP and the recommendation is complete. What is the recommendation? Because these people down there are still fired up over that intersection. And I get calls about it all the time. What are we going to do there?
Shantae, do you know if the details of that project have been determined yet? Because I don't know if design has started.
Design has not started, but we are anticipating doing some public outreach this spring to present some different design alternatives for the project. Representative Schwarzkopf, when it says the recommendation is complete, the recommendation of the 5 points working group, which said to initiate a capital project, that piece is complete. The project isn't complete, the work isn't complete on it, but that piece is complete.
Yeah, I was under the impression that they were going to have some meetings where people could come out and complain about either the light or a circle, either one. And I wanted to mention that the way this was put out there, it sounded like you had made a decision on that, and I was pretty sure that hadn't happened yet. And I just want anybody else on this that's listening from that area, if they're listening, that's what they're interested in. So I just want them to know that there will be some future input from the public on that intersection. Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Speaker. Okay. So C14, again, was studying the feasibility of installing a your speed display on southbound Route 1 Nassau Road. This is something we are going to initiate this year. So it needs to be it's a partnership, as all your speed displays are throughout the state. Funding comes from legislators' community transportation funds. And if a sponsor is found, DELDOT's going to do the technical work, the study to determine if it's appropriate, do the design and install the display.
Jeff.
Yes, Representative.
Thank you. When it comes to some of these, I noticed right here it says that it comes from legislators and CTF funds. In what way would you be using these types of signs, your speed signs, exactly on Route 1?
I'm sorry, I missed the last thing that you said there.
That's okay. It's would you be displaying these things? Would these signs be in a fixed and permanent position?
I believe that is the intent, yes.
My concern would be that we allow traffic enforcement where necessary and have these things in a mobile form. Fixed signs, I think that DELDOT already knows that statistics show that fixed signs lose their sensitivity to the public once the public seems to get used to them. And this new signs are greater and more effective, and we should be able to move them around as necessary. So I'm not sure that I'm going to feel comfortable with fixed signs as a stewardship of public funds when most of these CTF money is for the community, and lots of developments would rather see that money go to them rather than out on Route 1.
Okay, thank you for that. All right. And Representative Schwarzkopf.
Jeff, if I could just jump in, I mean, I think that last comment by Representative Smick kind of goes to show, we have our implementation plan, but we still are looking for input and guidance and feedback and direction and so forth. So, the comments that you all are making, the information you're bringing to us on each of these recommendations, we really appreciate, and we look forward to that. So thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. And the reason why some of these say things like study the feasibility of is we may determine, like Representative Smick mentioned, that something is not what everyone is looking to pursue. And in some cases they will, and we'll go ahead and move forward with it.
Jeff, Bob Fisher has his hand up.
Great. Hi, Bob.
Yeah, without getting into politics, it appears that we are getting into more of a surveillance society rather than, I mean, to improve safety. I've never been opposed to speed cameras as long as they worked appropriately. And I would look at putting speed cameras about every 3 miles along southbound 1 from Route 16 down to 5 Points intersection once the Route 16 traffic light is taken away. Because, you know, people are going to come crashing, kind of run down there at 75 miles an hour and then run into people along Cave Neck and Midas Conaway. So I hope I don't get hate mail and death threats for putting this on the table. But as a 46-year engineer with lots of safety engineering and risk management as part of my work, when you launch satellites, you got to make sure they don't crash down and kill people. Or rockets or missiles. I just think that unmanned speed cameras that send out fines. I know it works in the Washington D.C. area because they're all around, particularly in Maryland. I don't think they're legal. So anyway, that's just my thought.
Thank you, Bob. I don't know if anyone from DelDOT wants to speak to the policy and legislative implications of speed cameras, because they do require enabling legislation in the states where they're currently used.
That's correct, Jeff. I mean, that's the only thing that I would say is we currently don't have the authority to do that at this time.
Thank you for the suggestion, Bob.
Okay, Jeff, why don't you keep going and we'll get through section C.
Got it. So our next was C19, which was looking at an all-way stop at Beaver Dam Road and Kendall Road. DelDOT did conduct a safety study to determine how that might work, especially because of the curve. An all-way stop may not be the best approach there, especially because of the potential to increase rear-end crashes at that location. The Henlopen TID study did look at this intersection. It considered a roundabout, but a roundabout was not sufficient to handle anticipated traffic in 2045. So the TID study recommended a traffic signal, which would be installed when the signal warrant is met. So this was studied for feasibility. It was determined not to be feasible. And so the feasibility study is marked complete. C20.
Jeff, can you just, we've mentioned, Sarah mentioned it a couple times in her presentation, and now you have as well, the signal warrant. Just for everyone who's on, just 10 seconds on what that means, what a signal warrant is.
Sure. There are specific studies that are done related to traffic volumes, highway capacity, and safety at a particular intersection to determine if a signal would make it function better from both a mobility prospect and a safety perspective. Generally, what happens is if you install a signal where there isn't enough volume, it will create crashes, it will create rear-end crashes. So you don't install a signal unless there's a combination of volume and safety that requires it to be installed.
Right. So it's kind of, will be monitored, and when the need is determined based on data, then it will go through the process of getting installed.
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
Thanks, Jeff. We
had the example of Kings Highway and Clay Road, where a signal was just installed. It was not put in until the intersection met warrants. The intersection of Route 9 and Minos Conaway Road was mentioned earlier in the meeting. DelDOT did just do a study last year there and determined it is not yet time to put in a signal, but recommended a southbound right turn lane on Minos Conaway. So you'll see as we go through this process, sections will start coming up on the list saying, yes, it does now meet warrants for a signal. All right, speaking of signals, this is the intersection of Route 1 and Holland Glade Road, where there's currently a hawk signal, which is a special signal for pedestrians to cross Route 1. Recommendation C20 recommended determining whether that could be replaced with an actual signal. which would have a fourth leg, a west leg at the outlets. And that's being done in conjunction with a development project. Coastal Station is being developed on the east side of Route 1 at Holland Glade. In conjunction with that development, the hawk signal would come out and a full signal would be put in with that fourth leg on the west side accessing the outlets. So feasibility study is done. It was determined to be feasible. The intersection's now in final design. So this study is now. And that's it for category C.
And we kind of took some questions as we went there, so I'm going to assume that if someone had a question, they were going to ask it, unless I see a hand kind of pop up right now. Jeff, why don't we go ahead to D?
You got it.
And Jeff, just a quick reminder, again, this will be my last reminder to any members of the public. If you do wish to make a comment at the end of our meeting, you just have to click on the QA button, which is the question and answer button, and just type in your name and that you would like to make a comment. Again, right now we don't have any comments, so I just want to let people know that. All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Andrew. Category D is for walking, bicycling, and transit, and we have a change in several of these. D2 is looking at potential connections for walking and bicycling between existing neighborhoods, along streets, to trails. This has been mentioned several times, including in our presentation from John Fiore from DelDOT about DelDOT's bicycle program. So this is being initiated as part of the Route 1 low stress bikeway study, which I'm sure we'll have a presentation on here at one of our future meetings, but it's to look at connections along and across Route 1 between the 5 Points area and Rehoboth Beach to provide better access for biking and walking. D6 is another one we're going to be starting in 2021, and this goes with D10, which I'll talk about in a moment. It's to study the feasibility of pedestrian bridges over Route 1. This was proposed by the public at one of our public workshops in Phase 1 and received a very high response in the public survey for they wanted to see move forward. So we're going to be looking for locations of existing and future pedestrian crossing demand that's away from intersections. So we do know from experience throughout Delaware that construction of a pedestrian bridge at a location where you can actually still cross down at grade tends to be ineffective. Most folks will often not choose to go all the way up and over, but instead will just go ahead and cross the highway at grade. So we're going to look at this at locations where there's not an intersection and you're able to provide a barrier in the median so that people cannot cross at grade. And that barrier recommendation is D10.
Jeff, Bob Fisher has his hand up. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, my comment was about D2, and real quick, I really would like to thank DelDOT for starting this. I can't thank you enough. And I crossed the Lewis Georgetown trail 4 times today, and every time I came to a near stop, and 3 times though I came to a complete stop to let pedestrians, bikers, and a young lady pushing a baby carriage cross that way. I saw about 12 or 13 people cross there in just a short time that I was crossing. And as gasoline goes from $2.50 a gallon to $10 a gallon in the next couple of years, I really think that use of bicycles is going to explode in this area, especially in the summertime when people see biking as a kind of a good way to get where they want to go and also have some fun. So I want to personally thank DelDOT. And I'm not a biker, but in my development, about 3/4 of the people I talk to have biking as a very high priority for, they're enjoying the area. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, so what we would like you to ask you, and we're just going to do this relatively quickly, and you'll have an opportunity to provide further input later on, but we're at 7:30 and I want to be respectful of your time. What locations should we look at in terms of potential pedestrian bridges on Route 1? And again, we're looking at places where you see people walking across mid-block today or that you're aware that there is a place that people are trying to access mid-block that they would benefit from being able to cross over. So if there happen to be a couple ideas that working group members have, we'd love to hear them now.
Go ahead, Speaker Schwarzkopf.
Well, I, for one, am not in favor of overpasses. I will say that if there were to be one, the place I put it is where the Hawk signal is, right there by the outlets. I mean, you have the crossover from the outlet to outlet, but then again, you're going to eventually put that intersection in there. They'll have crosswalks and everything of that nature to be able to cross there. I can tell you that, I mean, there are spots up and down the highway, but nothing consistent. I mean, Target, or not Target, Kmart, there used to be traffic back and forth there. But now that place, it's gone. It's going to be a grocery store now. But I don't know. I mean, you go up to Atlantic Liquors, but that's a crosswalk there too. So I don't know. I mean, we're providing the crosswalks across the highway that they can safely get across. I mean, Route 1 is not safe. It's never going to be completely safe. You can only just do the best you can. But as long as you have people walking and biking under the influence, you're going to have problems. And so that's a lot of what we have down here. So people that get hurt. The past couple of fatalities that we've had have all been alcohol related. But I really don't know the answer to that question. There are spots, depending on what week it is in summer. The population shifts down here from week to week. You get different people here in June than you get in July and August. So, I mean, I don't know how to answer your question.
That's fair enough. Thank you.
Anyone else have any specific locations? Lloyd, I'm going to come to you. I don't often like to put people on the spot, but love to hear your thoughts if there's certain locations that you would like to see us look into a little bit in more detail about a pedestrian bridge.
Well, I was thinking the area of Morse Road or West Coates and Route 1, and that would serve the park and ride and Lowe's and, give a good connection. Otherwise, they have to go from Route 9 all the way down to Wawa. And that's probably, close to a mile? So anyway.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So that's the area I'm thinking.
Okay.
And you have a lot of people that are using the fixed route buses, and the buses do carry bicycles.
Great. Thank you, Lloyd.
Hey, Andrew, I had my hand up to talk about the park and ride, the DART park and ride location. So I totally agree with Lloyd on that.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Anyone else? So this isn't a one-shot deal. What we'd love for you to do is to give some thought to it. And, just send us an email. Send it to Jen Snelly Miller. You obviously have her contact information, but we'd love to hear anything that you might have. Speaker Schwarzkopf, I see your hand up. I don't know if you didn't take it down or if it's back up, but if you want to come back on, great. If not, I'll assume you just left.
I did take it down, but I put it back up. I have a comment about the bicycles I'd like to make. For everybody that's listening, we have talked in the past about the not stopping at the stop signs and the law that was put in place that comes up for review. It was sunsetted when they put it in, where they can just run the stop sign if there's nobody coming. And we were talking about how dangerous that is on the bike trail and everything like that with them people just coming across, especially up on Route 9 now, where they just cut right out there. We talked about probably not putting that back into the law. I'm looking at you to see if you have any recognition of this conversation. Remember this conversation?
Yeah.
Okay.
We talked about it last time.
I want to tell you that some things have changed. We have a new pro tem in the Senate, and the bill has been introduced to make that sunset it out, to make that permanent so that it would be in play again. I think it's a very dangerous proposition, and I think that when you come to stop sign, you should stop, and obviously on Route 1. But you have the pro tem and the majority whip in the House are the two prime sponsors. So that creates a little bit of problem. So if you guys don't want this thing, you need to contact some of your legislators and tell them it's a dangerous thing that we're doing to allow these bicyclists to just continue on without stopping at stop signs. In their judgment, if it's safe to do so, because it's on Route 1, it's just, I wouldn't suggest that be safe in any circumstance. So just wanted to let you know it has changed a little bit with the two sponsors that are on there. So we'll see what happens. But I know they have the bill. I think it's been introduced. I don't think it's going anywhere right yet, though. I don't think it's been in committee or anything. So, all right.
Thank you, Speaker.
And so, Jeff, I'm going to have you move on, but I do want to just, a question came in as to whether with pedestrian bridges, do they have to be equipped with elevators? Maybe someone could respond to that, and then we could move forward.
I can speak to that. Any bridge must be ADA accessible. So that can be handled either through an elevator or through a long ramp at a grade that meets ADA standards.
Great.
Okay, D8. This recommendation was to study the feasibility of a park and ride on Route 24 at the edge of the study area. A location has not yet been determined, of course, but DTC is going to initiate a study to determine where that might occur. D9, we did just hear about this a little bit, and this is identifying potential connections to and from the Lewis Transit Center. This will be looked at as part of the low-risk bikeway study. We have heard a lot of people, and certainly we heard it again tonight, in looking at Shady Road and Marsh Road as a potential opportunity for being able to cross for walking and biking. And then D10, this goes hand in hand with D6, so we'll probably just lump those together in future updates. A pedestrian bridge is only effective if you provide a barrier in the median so that people do not cross at grade. So those two are part and parcel of each other, those two recommendations. And then finally, looking at opportunities for pedestrian crossings on Kings Highway and Freeman Highway. I'm sure many of you have seen the rectangular rapid flashing beacon. Us engineers, we do love our acronyms, are installed, but are not yet operating, and DRBA is going to be, DELDOT's working with DRBA, who owns that, to get it going. And I'll just briefly go into E, and then I'll see if there are any final questions before I wrap up. There are no new recommendations advanced under category E. The recommendation E7 was looking at a connection. This is, if you could picture north-south along the west side of Route 1, the lane with the intersection of Old Landing Road and Airport Road. There are a couple of sections to that. One is north from Old Landing to Route 24. So that element of the extension is in progress. It's not yet clear how that extension could work north of 24 going up to Postal Lane. But existing developments may or may not render that feasible. So DELDOT needs to determine whether that is something that can continue to work in the future. With that, I'm happy to take if there are any further
Jeff,
last questions.
I think Gail has her hand up. Gail, why don't you come off of mute and go ahead?
Okay.
We can hear you.
Yes. On opportunities for pedestrian crossings on Kings Highway, I just wanted to bring to your attention, it's not on our list, but having been out there recently for some events and crossing over that road and trying to get to the bike path when parking at the high school. And a lot of people park at the high school and cross Kings Highway to access the J&B Trail. So I think that it's important to consider a pedestrian refuge there in the center of that road, because even with the light that you have, the push button light that you can change the light to cross, but when you get out in the middle of that road and there's traffic coming from different directions and, you know, a lot of traffic coming out of the high school when the high school's letting out and a lot of young drivers, et cetera, it's really, you know, you can get stuck out in the middle there. And there's no pedestrian refuge there. And I would like to put that on the table to be considered.
Thank you, Gail. We gave a presentation of a project map, and I don't recall if that was at our July or October meeting last year. The Kings Highway project is going to be moving forward. That is in the CTP, and that was mentioned as part of that discussion. So I just jotted down a note to make sure that we let the folks know who are moving that project forward of your suggestion. So thank you.
But that may not be for quite a few years before that's implemented. And meanwhile, it is a dangerous crossing.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, do we have any other questions?
I don't see any hands raised, Jeff, so I think we're good to go.
Great. So what are we going to do next? We continue working on these recommendations, as we always do. Provide you email progress updates and in late February and late March. Our next working group meeting will be in April. This is the time of year at which we prepare our annual report for the previous year. So we have actually already started compiling information for the report on 2020, which will be issued in spring 2021. As last year, we're going to be providing that information to you in advance so that you can see everything that went on. And then we will hold a public workshop. We're expecting probably in the same time frame as last year in May or June to present the findings of that annual report. And before I turn it over to Andrew to take any public comments that may arise, I did want to give you information on a related study that you should be aware of. Some of you may have heard the term the Coastal Corridors Study. I think we may have mentioned it a couple times as part of the working group process, but this is moving forward. This is an east-west study that encompasses routes 16 and 404 from the Maryland state line to just west of Route 1. So, of course, Route 404 is along the same alignment as Route 9, approaching 5 Points. So this project ends just to the west side of where the 5 Points study area is. DelDOT and Sussex County, again, are working together on this because of the success of the effort that you all are part of. We started a listening tour in late 2020, talking with a number of elected officials, residents, business owners, folks who are associated with institutions like school districts and things like that. And there will be some virtual public meetings coming up this spring, likely in March. So if you'd like more information on that, coastalcorridors.deldot.gov is the study website. And we'll continue to check in with you every once in a while just to make sure that you know what's going on with that study. It's not specifically in this area, but of course it's close and it's related, so you should be aware of it.
Thanks, Jeff. So we're going to go to public comment at this point, but I don't have anyone who actually signed up to provide any public comment. But I thought I would do is just, there were a couple of comments made in the Q&A. I just thought I would read them. Yule Lee asked if in the Henlopen TID diagram, there's a thick yellow line, which was over the Love Creek Bridge on Route 24. And the question was, is it planned to be dualized? And Mark Cote, the Director of Planning for DelDOT, wrote, it is part of the overall TID program, but not currently in the 6-year CTP. And then I already asked one of the questions about the pedestrian bridges, whether they're equipped with elevators. The last comment was just from a Joe Hockner who said, we need a bridge by the bus terminal next to Lowe's. So that was just it. So we don't have any public comments. So why don't we go to wrap up the meeting, but I do know that Gail has her hand back up. So Gail, why don't you come back on?
I'm trying to take it down.
Okay, that's fair enough. You can just leave it up at this point. We're gonna wrap things up right now. Jeff, why don't you go to the last slide that we have? Yeah, there we go. So again, if anyone has any last questions or comments, please raise your hand at this point. But if not, we're just going to wrap up. Jeff already mentioned the next meeting in April. Again, we have no idea whether it'll be virtual, in person. I can tell you that we all look forward to the day of being able to get back in person. This has worked great, and we're happy the way it has worked, but we would like to be back together at some point. I don't know when that will be, but the next meeting is April 26th. We continue to thank you for all of your participation. We thank our elected officials for their participation, and I saw, well, I had a hand raised, but it went down. So
no, it's
there it is. Okay,
there
Bob,
it is.
yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. I had some email exchanges with Del Dot traffic studies, and included Gene Donaldson in them. There were been some serious crashes at on one at Cave Neck. And I was asking Del Dot to look at lowering the speed limit up that way, maybe a little north of Cave Neck, all the way down to 5 Points. And they actually said they were looking at that. Does anybody who's on this meeting from Del Dot know the status of that effort? And I think that our elected officials, I'm pretty sure Steve Smick is interested in that topic too, because I've discussed, traffic calming with him into 5 Points a lot. But, given and also, I think Josh probably is aware of this effort too, right? And maybe this is not the right time to ask that question, but I meant to ask it earlier, and I just yeah, go ahead.
Let me see them. Let me just see if anyone from Del Dot would like to respond. Okay, I don't see anything, Bob. So we'll we hear your question, and we'll review that, and be back in touch with you, and obviously we can capture it in the meeting minutes, as well as if need be anything in our monthly email update.
Would Josh like me to forward the email traffic that I had, the last thing that I got that was being looked at? I'm trying to remember who sent it to me. Maybe Chris Sylvester sent it to me. I'm not sure.
Sure, you can go ahead and forward that to us, Bob.
Who should I send it to?
Well, just send it to Jen. All communication.
Oh, to Jen. Oh, yeah. I'll send it to Jen Sinelli. Okay.
Yep, and then she will be able to get it out to wherever we need to to get that out. Thanks, Bob. Carol, you had a question or comment before we wrap up?
I was wondering about the law that Speaker Schwarzkopf was talking about. Is that the bicycle approaching or entering intersection law that is going to expire October 5th, 21? I just like some clarification on what law he's talking about, or what they're.
Yeah, Gail, that is correct. There's a provision, they passed the new section of the law, and they put that provision in there, but they sunsetted that provision, and it expires whatever date you just said. It expires on that date unless they take further legislative action to put it back in the code.
Okay, and
just that one section when they approach the stop sign.
Okay.
And we had a conversation about it at our last meeting. I think it was maybe 2 meetings ago, where a lot of us thought it was pretty silly to do that, because it have that provision in the code, because it was very dangerous with these bikes that are coming out, not stopping, and just going right on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's House Bill 36, just so everyone knows.
I researched it.
Thank you.
All right, great.
Shante, I don't know whether the department wants to take a position on that. I don't know. I don't know. You're going up against two sponsors, but I plan on telling them what I think and voting against it. But I just want to point one thing out. one of the two sponsors is an avid rider, and I trust him to do the right thing. But when you pass a law like this, you're passing it for everybody, not just for one or two people. You're telling our kids that it's okay to run through a stop sign if they think it's safe to do so. Our kids, and I think that's wrong. Our kids they should be conditioned to stop at the red stop sign. I'm off my soapbox.
All right. Well, with that, again, we'll wrap up. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to the team for pulling all this information together. And again, as always, you can look forward to our next email following 5 points update. And that will come out at the end of February. She doesn't get any recognition, so I'll give it to her. Kristen Offeld, I thank you for doing all the hard work to pull that together. Have a great night, everyone, and we will be in touch. And thanks so much. Take care. And thanks to the public who joined us.
Take care, everyone.